Halifax, Nova Scotia. At noon, the gang gathered behind a tall stone monument in a square in downtown Halifax. They stared at a white, shingled church with a green steeple at the south end of the square. "It's beautiful," Kara said. "St. Paul's Church, the oldest building in Halifax, built in the 1700s. It survived the explosion in 1917. It even has a ghost," Dan said. Look at this window." He held up his phone and showed them a picture of one of the stained glass windows. A profile was clearly shadowed in the pattern of the once shattered glass. He read from his phone. "In the explosion, the window shattered in the form of a profile of the one-time assistant at the church. He is said to still haunt the aisles." "Boo! We've got enough on our hands without a ghost," Amy said. "We picked it because it's on the tourist track and we've got exits if we have to get out fast. Kara, if you hang out in City Hall, will you be close enough to hack into Atlas's phone?" Kara nodded. "Already checked it out. The longer you keep him talking, the more chance I'll have. He'll have firewall after firewall." Amy walked a few steps closer. She had already studied the church online. It seemed like the perfect place for the meeting. Met all requirements. She was still nervous. Ian joined her. I've gone over it and over it in my head," he said. "We'll be okay. Things could go wrong that you don't expect," Amy said. "I've planned for every eventuality," Ian said. "This is a business meeting. He either agrees to help us or he doesn't." "True," Amy said. "But this is a guy who's dealt with the baddest people on the planet. He could be unpredictable." Amy heard the chime of a text and glanced at her phone. A surge of happiness made her face burn. It was from Jake. "Heading off to the farther dig for 2 weeks. We'll be off the grid. Miss you." "Me too," Amy replied. "Thinking about heading back to Harvard next year. Ready to come home. Atticus, too. Cambridge is close to Attleboro. Will you be done with your swift wanderings by then? Might be nice to live on the same continent as my girlfriend." Amy stared down at the text. The prospect of a normal life hummed in her hand. Possibility. Back to Massachusetts. Back to Jake. Seeing him, being with him, continuing on this journey of getting to know each other. Was she ready? Was she ready? She felt giddy just thinking about it. Across the globe, Jake sat waiting for her answer. She couldn't tell him that the house in Attleboro could be gone forever. She had to see that future and trust that she could make it true. "Sounds perfect. Yes. Yes." The answer came back swiftly. "I am smiling." Amy pressed XO and turned off the phone. She felt her heart lift on the breeze and skid over the rooftops. She caught Ian looking at her and tried to suppress her smile. "Sorry." It was Jake. "How do you do that?" Ian asked. "What?" "Be happy with someone," Ian blurted. Amy almost laughed, but she saw it was a serious question. "Well, I'm hardly an expert," she said. "The first time I met Jake, I hit him hard. Then we didn't want to admit we liked each other. Then we got together. Then we broke up." we got back together, there were whole months that it seemed like all we did was argue. That sounds familiar, Ian said. And then, we decided to trust each other. Ian looked at her with such an expression of bewilderment on his face that she was tempted to laugh again, but bit her lip instead. Lucians don't trust people, he said. There probably would have been a time when Amy would have nodded and accepted that. All those divisions that kept the Cahill branches apart. Lucians are sly. Ecats can fix anything. Janus are the life of the party. If you want to move a refrigerator, ask a Thomas. But Cahills weren't just about different branches. They were people. Individual, quirky people with their own histories and likes and dislikes and their own secret sorrows and their own secret joys. Oh, please, Amy said. That's your father talking. Of course you trust people. You trusted your sister. You trust me and Dan. Then, and the rest of us. Now you just take one more step. You have to trust the person who can break your heart. She nudged him with her shoulder. Why do girls do that? Ian said in exasperation. Because boys don't listen hard enough. Come on, let's get back to the others. We've only got another hour before Atlas shows up. Time to check the perimeter. They rejoined the others. So, who goes to the meeting? Dan asked. Everyone looked at Amy, but she looked at Ian. She felt the need to speak, pressing against her throat, but she had to respect Ian's leadership. Still, it was hard to have to constantly keep her mouth shut. Jonah is too public, Ian said. This place is too pretty. Well, this face is too pretty, yo, Jonah said. But I'm your backup if something goes over. You and Kara, Ian said, nodding. He answered the email so quickly, not because he needed the work. He knows about the Cahills. How can you be so sure? Amy asked. Because he's an underground presence, just as we are, Ian said. He thinks we have unlimited resources and he knows we're powerful. But clearly he does not know about the attempted takeover of the family, and that we essentially would be without the cash to pay him his fee if we didn't have Jonah's Hollywood bankroll. What's mine is yours, cuz, Jonah said. So, let's stick to our story. No embellishments. Amy was glad to see that Ian was back in his usual mode, giving orders. It was a good sign. When you're trying to get something out of someone who is suspicious of you, Ian said, you have to use the KISS method. You have to kiss him? Dan cried. Gross. Keep it simple, stupid, Ian explained. KISS. The more details you give, the more holes in the story. We just have to pay him for information. It's all about the money. We'll tell him we have to get on that ship. He doesn't have to know why. If he balks, we'll intimidate him. Amy opened her mouth, then snapped it closed. She didn't think intimidation would work with this guy, but she couldn't undermine Ian in front of the others. Besides, he could be right. Behind her back, she crossed her fingers. Keep it simple. And hope for luck.